Hello, everybody. Let's continue our analysis about the crisis happening in 2008 and 2009. And we just gave the explanation about the Chinese measures to deal with the crisis. And we now we try to give you the pictures to show that what happened that time. Here is the 2007. Many enterprises in the public downgrade, and so from the 30th of May, and it started. The so-called crisis in the stock market started, and then several days later, 20 trillion Chinese yuan. It's almost 3 trillion American dollars in the stock markets vanished. Vanished means that it's no matter it's from public investment or from the private investments, they got to facing the challenge of this big loss. But this time, few people suicide. It's not like 1990s. If you have some stock market downgrades, and some people will be bankrupted. But this time, you cannot hear the people bankrupted. And that means that a lot of money, not from themselves. But you can have another phenomenon that many investors run away. In Chinese, it's 跑路. So we said 老板跑路 means that the businessmen run away. Originally, they may take the responsibility. There is some people suicide in 1990s when just China opened the stock markets. You know, China opened stock markets in the beginning of 1990s. I have given the stories in the lectures we have given, and but this time they just change their behavior, just run away. And there are many people do the very bad things, meaning they collect money illegal, and then to use this money for the speculation markets and for the venture investments. And they promised to give the high interest, but indeed it's just a kind of trap. So from this time, from the first decades of the 21st century, in China, you can see a lot of traps, streaks, and a lot of things bad. And these are businessmen, and especially these businessmen in the speculative markets, in the speculation investments, and became a kind of trend not to maintain the trust, not have the credit. It became a lot of how to say that in China is a 奸商, but I cannot translate into English. But it means they are bad men. And but same things happen in the United States. You may know that it's so-called the trip by Madoff. Maybe it's a beggar, but a lot of bad men learn from him as a model. So we can have many things like him. Anyway, but after this disaster, physical sector, the physical economy, still maintained high growth. Means that, as just now I mentioned that the financial sector grew up very faster to be more and more independent, but it's not exactly serve the physical production. So the money we said there's a Chinese word, 脱实向虚, means leave the physical economy, turn to the, how to say, 向虚 means turn to the speculations, turn to the intangible economy. That is a kind of a new trend since this crisis. So the crisis turned a lot of businessman behavior bad. Originally, they may keep some responsibility, but nowadays it's a change. So here to show that the foreign trade decreased, especially the exports, from the 2008 and 2009 down to the minus, and then the import also large decreased, and then GDP decreased. So caused by the foreign trade decrement and the GDP downgrade. And here the unemployment increased at the highest, but it's the percentage is still be small. It is by the official statistic books, but even by official calculation, it still be very high. So in the 2008, and here is a foreign direct investments in the year 2008, 2009 also decreased. So that is the crisis happened in China. When we said it's that is the similar as the late 1990s. When we do the analysis of the late 1990s crisis, we said that is the first China encountered the import crisis. Means that time is the crisis happened in East Asia and then impact China. But that time it's real import because the inflation is import. We said import inflation because all the raw materials, the price goes high. All the oil price goes high. And the grain also price goes high. Just now I mentioned since of 2008 Wall Street crisis, United States adopt the measures to deal with the crisis and then to give a large number of liquidity to these investors, and then they put the investment into the future markets and then to make the price goes high. So that is a bad impact China. It means that China input is a high inflation. And that is means that the second time, since 1990s, China accessed globalization. And the first time is late 1990s, got a big lesson. Second time is later first decades of 21st century, got second lessons. So the import the crisis. So we said that the difficulty of the macro adjustment of the governments come from the cost transferring. So finally, we'll have a lose-lose game. So the financial expansion in North and the macro adjustment dilemma in South means that the South country like China, even you gain the industrialization, when you're facing the challenge of the global crisis, you have a very difficult time to carry out the macro adjustment. Here is the North countries. They have a financial competition and they enlarge the financial capital. Here is the South countries. They have the industry competition. So there's a physical economic competition, there's a intangible economic competition. These are two different allies. And then here, that's because they have the crisis, so they have a QE1 to QEN. In this time, they have a QE4. QE1, QE2, QE3, QE4. Quantitative easing means release large number of the liquidity into the market. And then we can see that these are flow to where? To the institutional investments. means that it's a big financial evil. They take large number of money and then they use this money into capital markets and also into future markets of energy and grain and also raw materials, and to make high interest. So the capital markets and the future markets linked together to have a high interest taken by the institutional investments, and means that they are not benefits any physical production, including for themselves. So even the West countries, the physical economy will bad impact by such kind of behavior, and also to the overseas demand, means that when they downgrade their economy physically, certainly they will have no ability to buy the commercial goods, so the foreign demand decreased, and then it's a bad impact the Chinese physical economy, and then government got to issued trillions of the bonds, both central and local, and then these bonds invest into the infrastructure construction to replace the downgrade of the foreign demand, and but they need to import the raw materials, but raw materials has been very high price, so means that the price of the PPI and the CPI goes much high. So it's also bad impact the physical economy, because of this PPI and the CPI also influence the money interest rate. So that is the money interest became more and more high and near to the usury. And when usury happened, large number of the money from the bank, out of the bank, taken by private sector, invest into the usury market. So that is also impact the physical economy. So then the low income equal new normal. And then this usury money only applied to speculator market. Also the speculator markets influence the infrastructure construction. So to make the local governments have more debts. Understand, here is the high interest rate money, here is also. So to make a lot of raw materials to be a speculator markets exchange, and then to make the local debts increased. That is why the difficulty adjustments facing the challenge of these things. So we said that one is that we have got to tolerate the transferring from the institutional cost by North. So the South countries competed with North finally to take too much institutional cost. And not only that, but also the large number of the QE give money to the capital markets and then to have overseas investments, invest into the physical economy, to take the physical economy more than 50% shares, control the benefits. And then this strategic acquisition to take a lot of high interest back to the capital markets, and then to make S&P, to make these American stock market indicators increased, and then to absorb a lot of capital flow back to the American stock market. So it's because of the high interest come from the strategic acquisition. So take large number of the income from the physical economy back to the stock markets in Western countries. That is the second profits. The first profits is make high inflation and then transfer out the cost. Second profits that come from the overseas investments. And that is many commercial goods exports to these Western countries to make them have a low bank rate and a low CPI. So that is a very, very strange phenomenon. If you issue too much currency, means that you need to have inflation. But they don't have inflation. They still have a very low CPI. That's because of the commercial goods they take from the physical countries, physical production countries, and with a very low price. So low price commercial goods cannot have a CPI increment. That is we said the game. So nowadays, this time, China stand. But can China stand longer? No way. Just this time. So this structural analysis to show that unfair competition of the global economy. Yeah, even that in the real GDP growth, and China still be the highest here. The highest is above 10%, more than 10% GDP growth, and even that's just this year of the crisis, China still can have a 9%, and then later it's 11%, even 12 and 13%. So China is a high GDP growth country, and the others, African and South Asia and Australia and Brazil and these countries still be followed because that one day can export a lot of raw materials like Australia, because raw materials price increased by this large number of the QE money invested into the future markets. So these countries have a free riding. They benefit by the raw materials markets price increased. So these countries and African countries and like Brazil and these, if they have a materials export, they all enjoy large amount of returns. So that is also why these African countries and Latin American countries, and they have somehow high social welfare in that time, but and also like no, not here. Here, the Near East and the Middle East, these oil countries, all have some kind of good performance. So we can see that caused by Wall Street financial turmoils, when American adopt QE policy, they made these raw materials export country all have a very high income. And but China have a very effective measure, that is rural how to say, rural reconstruction. It's because of China from 2005 started to enlarge rural investments, mainly for infrastructure construction. You can see that the finger increased more fast, and the percentage also from 2008 increased very sharply. But the number increased. It means that, and the governments normally emphasize we need to change the situation in countryside. The decision made in the year 2003, implemented since the year 2005, not because of the 2008 crisis. They have done it for several years, especially from 2005 and before the big crisis taking place. 2005 to 2010 is the 11th Chinese 5-year plan. This 5-year plan to make the strategic investment point, investment project, rural new countryside construction is originally be decided to be a national strategy to invest by the central and the local governments. So because of that, I mean, China seems have made a preparation before the global crisis happened. So that is why Chinese can be very succeeded to deal with the 2008 crisis. It's not because of when the crisis happened, they followed to do something. It's before the crisis happened, they have done something. Just now I gave you the story about the Chinese subsidize the rural people to buy these commercial goods. If they haven't done the infrastructure construction to improve the road, the water, the electricity, and the telephone and whatever, so the people cannot buy the mobile phone, because the internet has been built up into the village, so people can buy millions of mobile phone. And then because of they have set up the pipe water into the village, so people can buy washing machine. So all of these things not happened in the year 2008, 2009, happened in the year 2003. And then large number of investments for infrastructure construction improvements, that is from 2005. So means at least before 2008, Wall Street financial crisis happened, at least 3 years preparation in China. So it's also strategic thinking. When the late 1990s, the crisis happened in East Asian countries, to push China to invest into the regional rebalance. That is rare. No country can have the rebalance of the regional gap. Even go to the United States, you cannot. But China realized rebalance of the regional gap. The inland China GDP increment much faster than the coastal China. That is from late 1990s. And then when they have a 3 big project, the national project for West China development, for Northeast China regeneration, and for Mid China rising, these are 3 big projects, has been invested into more than 6 trillion Chinese yuan. It's almost $1 trillion. And then to have a regional gap rebalance, and then they want to have a kind of rural-urban gap rebalance. So before the crisis, China has made the strategy to rebalance the rural and urban gap. Originally, dual system make the urban income is much higher, and then rural income is lower, and then rural infrastructure also very bad. So that is why the Chinese governments started to invest into the rural construction, mainly for the 2 things. One, that is infrastructure. Another is social construction. Social construction means that to set up the social umbrella. So these investments is large number of money, mainly from the state bank and from the budget. So the central governments take the responsibility since the year 2005. I mean, the 2005 is the first year of the 11th 5-year project. From that year, Chinese central government announced the rural investments is the central responsibility, not by local. So the central have a more ability to create the financial capital. So when I said that the financial capital created to be the independent capital, but mainly controlled by the central. And then central uses big financial capital, invest into no profit rural construction. Such kind of behavior cannot be taking place in any liberalist country. Only can be taken by state capitalism or statism. I stopped here for a second. Think about my words. Is there any liberalist country in the world can do such kind of acts, can do such kind of investments? Any market country can do such kind of investment? Talk about liberalize your market. Talk about liberalism. That is Western ideology, not workable in practical economic behavior. Especially when you're facing the challenge of the economic crisis. The government has to do the counter-cyclical crisis measures and then to carry out the macro adjustment. If you have no such kind of hands, one that is a government's bank system, another is a government budget, fiscal system, these two hands put together to do your readjustment, and then you may jump out from the economic crisis. That is the trap. So I just now gave you the explanation of South and North. What is the trap of the South? Why that they have a double loss by the competition with the North. Double loss. And then when they all have the double loss, how China jump out from such kind of trap? By the central make the right policy. The right policy means that central use the central two hands. Not only have a big head. This head, yeah, they make decision. But the hands means that they use two hands to do things. Not only think, but also do. How to do? By what? By two hands. One physical, another bank. All controlled by state, and then they can do it. So that is the curve shows that no return, no benefits rural infrastructure construction increased more faster since 2005 because central take the responsibility. And the conclusion is what? The central governments in China is a limited responsibility or unlimited responsibility. No return for these investments means that governments got to take the whole people's responsibility for the whole country. That is typical Oriental governments for the history. Since China set up the governments, their political philosophy always emphasize the governments need to care all the people in the country, in your territory. So that is a typical Oriental political history. Now in the modern society, there still be the heritage taken by the modern governments. So sometimes I do the analysis, I do the comparative study of Western political system and the Oriental political system. I said why these Oriental countries can have 1,000 years political history as a country. And Western countries, most of these countries are young countries. Several hundreds political countries' history. But in Oriental, especially in China, you can have many thousand years as a country's history. So that is different. So different country, different political system have different measures and also different outcome. So, but they do have a large number of investments for the 5 communication in the countryside. Almost 99% of the village built up the 5 communication. In the village, doesn't mean every household. Means electricity set up into the village. That is the government's responsibility. And then inside the village, to every household, is the responsibility of the village and of the households. Means that household pay the short facility the expense because that is inside of a village. So the village have a kind of facilities as to change the electricity measures, and then the households have so-called the common people's needs of the electricity. These facilities need to pay by the households. So means that 5 communication means build up the communication into the village, water into village, electricity in the village, road into village, and whatever, all built up into village and taken by the villagers, by households, and then households just pay the facilities from village to their house. And so that is 1 trillion in the 11 5-year plan. And then the total amount up to now is more than 10 trillions. Because every year they increase. But also they have a lot of problems by such kind of construction. The first is that when this infrastructure construction we built up, they need to take the land. But land now belongs to the households. So there are so many conflicts. Many, thousands conflicts. If you want to build the road need to occupy the land. The land belongs to the private households. So there must be some contradiction. If you cannot settle down, the contradiction turns to the conflicts. And then you build up the reservoir, irrigation system, all need to occupy the land. So if you want to, set up some irrigated water to the far land, and then some people they have the cash income outside the village. They don't want to come back to make your water pass their land. So you need to do something. And then when they come back, means that you have take their land. And then there is a contradiction. So many things like that. So I said the first, because that they occupied land as a resources. So there is many conflicts. Second one is that there is no short-term return. And also large number of the bank loans occupied by such kind of projects, so cannot taken back by the bank. So the bank need to have a new liquidity given by the central bank. So the central bank issued more currency, and then to make the larger and larger financial capital. That is the second outcome. The third one is that because the private sector have no return, so they don't want to interfere. They don't want to join, and then the country must give this such kind of investments, especially the budget loans, budget bonds investments, to the SOE. And SOE take too much physical industrial assets, and then squeezing the private sector out of the economic constructions. So, and then to make a lot of ideological problem. So this financial problems is social conflicts and ideological arguments. These are 3 kinds of problems made by such kind of securing economic measures. And then here we said this bond markets. You can see that the bond markets from 2000, the governments, here is a total. Here's the governments. The governments increased from here, 2008. Originally it's small, but here from 2008 it's increased more fast. And also the total bonds increased also from 2008. And then the corporate, these are firms, also increased, but not in 2008. it's later. So the bonds markets increase more faster, and then the percentage also from here, from 2008, increased. The percentage to the total investments in the whole economy also increased from 2008. Oh no, from this one is the percentage decreased, and I don't. Now here from this time not put into the markets. Here is just the bonds is exchange inside of the bank system. So these are increments, percentage in the GDP, to the GDP is increased, but to the social investments is decreased. And here is that finally you can see after this crisis, China have been the biggest industrial country in the world. Here you can see that after the crisis in the year 2012, the industrial GDP, if you use the PPP as the calculation, you can see that it's a double to US. I mean, China is the industrial GDP 2 times than the total amount of industrial GDP in US. And then that's one country equal other 8 industrial countries' industrial GDP. And the main sector of industries all have a high increment. So means that the crisis in China, not only the danger, but also the crisis. So taking the crisis as an opportunity, China has large investments into the infrastructure construction to create the local demand to the local industries, and then the local industries enlarged to be the top 1 of the world. That is a kind of small circle inside of China. So this time you can see that China win the fighting to the global crisis. But we also need to notice the basic situation. To be the industrialized country, for this U curve, it's a smiling curve, China is still be at the bottom. Originally, China should be here. The lowest profit. The highest profit is financial capital country, because in the financial capital era, the top country of the financial power only need to issue the liquidity, issue the paper money to enlarge the financial capital and then make them flow out, flow to the resources country. And then resources country can be free riding. And then to take the added value of the raw materials and the oil and the grain price increment. And then both of these 2 sides gave the pressure to the physical production country like China. So originally China must be here. But because when they have the crisis, they got to deal with the problem, so they don't pay the revenue of the environment and the social, in the labor. They don't pay enough income to the labor. So it means that they take large amount of the social revenues. They don't pay the environment loss. So it means that they take these environment revenues. So they have a large number of revenues. to maintain this industrial economy. So they are not at the bottom, they go up a little bit up. But still means that the physical economy, the industrial production, have lowest profit. That is why next decades, large number of the liquidity flow out from industries, invested into the bubble economy, like real estate, stock markets, and future markets, wholesale markets, whatever. They don't want to take little returns in physical production. They all want to go, and then some of these Chinese big company invest into the resources country, like Brazil or Venezuela or African countries, want to take the resources because resources price is too much high. So they have enough bad lessons in such kind of unfair global economic regulation. So they want to change. So they want to do something. First, they have a big financial capital. Second, they want to invest into these resources. They want to change the position. That is a big challenge to the traditional world regulation. So when they do it, originally here this one is the curve to show that in the industrialized era, and the interest can be taken by different sector as this kind of curve. But when the world upgrade the economy into the financial era, so the world regulation lead by the financial capital, and then the physical production downgrade to the bottom. So, and China can be soft landing just according to how to readjust these revenues. We said it's a ecologicalized revenue, and to make these revenues to be the socialized capital controlled by local. And then maybe China can stand for next time's more big institutional cost transfer to China. So this time they have, you mean this 2008 crisis, China has taken large institutional cost and stand there, no crash. But next time, maybe or maybe not, because the situation will be more and more severe. So we said that China can have a social innovation. Social innovation impact these the basic resources, not only the natural resources, but also the social resources. If China chooses the right strategy, nationwide, China may use these revenues, environment revenue, labor revenue, and resources revenue, and even the currency revenues, to make these basic resources by social innovation to have a more strong, how to say that, a more strong strength, strong power to contain the physical production. Otherwise, there will be more difficult if next time when China facing the 10th crisis. So this picture, that's we do our analysis about this time's, 2008 to 2010 global crisis. We found that this time China stand, and China can still gain the high growth, but it's not long term. And next time, when next global crisis happened, China will be more harder to deal with the crisis. So we don't say that China succeed of this time fighting the global crisis. We said China did have some success, but also have big cost. So it's next time may not be so so how to say that so easy. Maybe more difficult.